Hey everyone, welcome to my commentary track for my winning score from the February scoring competition for Danmaku Unlimited 3. The competition was hosted on shmups, but I don't think any more scoring competitions will be held on there. But the cool thing is I've decided to kind of follow up and run my own scoring competitions on my own subreddit called shmup STG. So anyway, this was the final scoring competition from shmups, probably. Maybe someone else will do one, but at least for the time being, this is the final one. And I'm happy to say that I ended up taking the win, so I thought a good way to celebrate would be to do a commentary track for my winning replay. So here we go. And so the scoring competition was on medium spirit mode. And at first I thought maybe this would be kind of uninteresting, considering that medium spirit mode, isn't that difficult survival-wise. But what's interesting is that when you start playing it for score, Dan 3 actually has a rank system, which I was actually unaware of before doing this competition. So it essentially bumps up to hard mode, which is much more challenging, and especially when you're trying to keep your chain going and graze all these bullets, it actually becomes pretty involved and a lot more than meets the eye. So this first stage here, I think I had a few references to really watch Pazzy Has a Run. The thing is though, all of the videos that are high scores are in hard mode, not in medium mode, which sounds like, yeah, so what, just copy what they do in hard mode. But the hard thing is, or I guess the tricky thing is that there's less bullets on screen, so the way you have to chain and milk stuff is actually a little different. So hopefully if people are looking to pick up medium mode, this video can actually be a helpful resource for you. So I think I should start off by talking about the scoring system in Dan 3, the grazing chaining. So I actually think it's really fun to play spirit mode. I thought that pure bullet grazing would be more interesting, but I don't know, I think the bullet canceling into spirits is really cool, especially if you start to learn how to abuse hyper and stuff like that. So I actually spent quite a bit of time trying to figure out how to maximize scoring in these initial two stages, just because there's not a lot of documentation on how the scoring system in this game works. And there'd be runs where I'd end the run and look and I'd have a much larger score than other times, even though it felt like I did about the same. And I realized a lot of that comes from, for one, obviously keeping that graze meter going at all times. Do not drop the chains in the first two stages. And then also maximizing hypers, and hypering at where you place your hypers during the boss fights counts a lot. So basically when you hyper, your initial charge causes bullets to turn into those stones, and then if you finish the phase with hyper, that also causes more stones. So basically you want to time it to where you're eating a lot of bullets, and then also making sure that you're finishing the phase off to cause more stones to appear, or more gems, I guess. And you'll see what's interesting in my replay, I don't know if other replays have done this, is I'm actually milking this boss quite a bit. So basically I'm trying to get a hyper each phase, or, well, as much of a hyper as I can. One nice thing about Dan 3 is that the developer was aware of people trying to milk phases and milk different sections, so there's actually a milking timer, I guess you could call it, where after a while you stop grazing and chaining, so you can't just milk these phases forever. There's a set amount of time you can do that, so you just want to find that sweet spot of basically maximizing the milking time without obviously dropping your chain or getting into that chainless danger no milk zone. I guess I don't know what to call that exactly. And this is a good phase one. I was worried that maybe my ending score, because so much of the score comes from the later stages, wouldn't be able to demonstrate a really good first two stages, but I was able to pull it off in this replay. So in this final phase, I could probably milk a little longer than I did in the replay right here. And the thing you really want to do with this boss is whenever it has those beam walls right there, those are just great point getters there, so just try and brush up on those as much as possible. That's a pretty huge chain for stage 1. That's one of my highest I've ever gotten, actually, so we're off to a good start for sure. But stage 1, is stage 1, it's not too bad. Stage 2 is kind of not quite where things come down to like make or break stuff, but basically I told myself I was going to have an essentially flawless stage 1 and stage 2, so I think that's what I achieve here. So my trouble with this stage was always trying to figure where to activate this first hyper. And this is kind of where I settled. I still don't know if it's the best place, but because you basically, with this stage 2, the difficulty is easy enough that you basically just want to hyper whenever possible, unless there's like a critical point where you need it to keep your chain going. So basically just hyper, kill as much stuff, get as many bullets, graze as much as you can, and hyper again. Which sounds basic, but in stage 3 and the later stage you actually can't do that. You need to know where to place your hypers a little better, but this one you can just let it rock. And I used to be a little more conservative, but I decided I was able to sneak an extra hyper in on this run, which was really good, so I got much higher. It massively boosts your points, by the way, getting those hypers, so I think it's called trance in this game, but it's a hyper, right? Yeah, this section right here was always challenging. Not that I would get killed, but sometimes it's one of those sections where you feel like you're not going to drop the chain ever because there's so many bullets, but the thing about them is if you graze them, because since they're so slow moving, you'll graze a bullet and then you think you'll re-graze it, but you don't, and then your chain just randomly drops. So this freaking boss, I had this one phase coming up where I always dropped the chain, like over and over and over. I just kept dropping the chain, and that just basically kills your run. Drop. So right here, this phase I'm going to milk because I want to go into the next phase with a nice juicy hyper. So, and you can actually milk this phase for quite a long time, but really it just comes to a point where it's like, okay, I'm not getting that much more from milking it, and I'm just putting myself at risk that much longer. So okay, we got that nice juicy hyper, and I used to use it right here, but I finally figured this is how you this was the part I kept dropping the chain, just because I'd do this one dodge where I just didn't quite have enough time to get the graze. And now we can see rank coming into play. So if you play this without doing a lot of scoring strategies and stuff, this phase won't have these bullets shooting at you from behind. That's a hard mode pattern. So I remember this was the point where I realized, yes, there is a rank, because that's definitely not in the usual difficulty pattern. This pattern looks kind of tricky, but it's really easy if you're willing to just go into shot and kind of macro dodge around it. It's actually really easy. This pattern is one of those nail biter ones because it's not fast, but it traps you, see? So you have to really strategically place yourself in where you're grazing, because this pattern will trap you very quickly if you're not careful. And I found that if you just kind of go off center to the left, middle, off center to the right, middle, off center left, and just kind of slowly go back and forth like that, it's usually enough to avoid, but sometimes it still traps me. So okay, we're going into stage 3 with a really nice score right now. 185 million. In stage 3, this is the make or break stage, where I usually would reset, because basically, yeah, if I drop this stage, I'm gonna lose way too many points. Right here, I gotta delay the hyper to right about there. This one, if you activate the hyper too late, that's not good, and if you activate it too early, it's not good. So that's definitely right about the place where you want to activate it, because of a mid-boss coming up. If you activate too late, well, you're not going to have enough to re-hyper the mid-boss, and if you activate too early, you're going to have to carry a hyper longer than you need to. So And the thing about this game that I think is helpful for people wanting to get into it is if you look at it from a distance, it looks like just, you're getting rained on constantly. It looks actually extremely challenging. But the nice thing about it is because spirit mode cancels those bullets, you can actually just concentrate on very small sections of the screen and just fire because your shot's wide enough, it's going to cancel out the bullets flanking you. So you can actually just concentrate on very small sections of the screen rather than having to really, like in Danmaku where you have to always keep an eye out for, random shots sniping you from the sides and stuff. And this one, because of the canceling stuff, you can just really focus in on, not directly on your ship, but like a small area rather than having to really take account of the whole screen all the time. This is a tricky part, keeping the chain. Right here. There we go. That's not the hardest link though, I'll point that out. But yeah, these beam ships, I hated them when I was playing casually, but when you start to play for score, you love them because they're like just a well of chain, so they're really good. Okay, this is the tricky part because if you kill those ships too early, it's over. So I had to learn that the hard way quite a few runs. Here we go. Yes, this is going really well right now, keeping the chain going. This isn't a flawless run though, I do make mistakes and the score could be a lot higher. But I still think it's extremely solid. I may come back and up my score one more time. Try and maybe get 3 billion or something like that. This pattern's not too bad, but the key here is you need to milk this pattern as much as possible because the next pattern is one of the worst in the game. It is freaking awful and you need hyper, otherwise you're just gonna get wrecked. Or most of the time I do, so I'll point out the part. Right here, this shit is a mess without hyper, and it does it again too. So that is exactly the point you want to activate hyper because it cancels that crap storm, and then the hyper deactivates right there and cancels the second crap storm. So you can avoid the hardest part of that pattern with a nice well-placed hyper. You'll see that on the final boss too. That's a really good strategy to use in this game, is not only accounting for the beginning of your hyper's cancel, but the second half. Okay, this pattern is god-awful. I call these the gates of hell. Now you see why. And I've never really found, to this point, a really solid path to do every time, because I think that there's a certain amount of randomization to this pattern, so you're always kind of just gripping on by the nails. You never exactly know what kind of bullshit this pattern is going to throw at you. I like it, overall, I do like the pattern, but yeah, it's a nail biter, and definitely, yeah, it's a shame it got me there. Dropped my chain, but I made it pretty damn far with that chain, so I was pretty happy. So the thing is after you complete a stage, you get rewarded a bomb, which is on the right there. And had I completed this stage without dying, I would have had... So the maximum bombs you can hold is 4. So if you go long enough to where you're awarded a 5th bomb, rather than getting a 5th bomb, obviously, since there's no slot for it, you get a maximum bonus score, which is really nice. It's not like Danmaku, I don't believe, where... No, it isn't, where, it's like a huge deal and it massively boosts your score. It helps a lot, but it's not like this constantly filling chain like in Danmaku. So that, a little bit of a letdown because I didn't get the max bonus, but still a really solid stage. And now I can kiss that bonus goodbye anyway, so whatever. Okay, stage 4, the moneymaker. This is the money-making stage, for sure. And I'm happy to say that I managed to cash this one in big time. So this is the stage that separates your runs from being good or great or complete shit, because this is the stage, at least stage 5, obviously you can get more points in, but the difficulty at this stage of my practice was to where I could get a pretty decent score, but I wasn't going to full chain the stage. So stage 4 is where it comes down to. And if I wanted to basically up my score even higher, I'd have to really be able to full chain the entire game, including stage 5, which could lead to insane point increases over what I have here, which I think is still a really high score. It is the highest score on the Shmups forum, and it used to be the second highest score on the French site, but the previous high score from AC, which was 2.5 billion, got deleted or removed for some reason, so I don't know what that's about, but yeah, so that makes this score the highest on both sites right now. Okay, these dragons, these gem dragons is what I call them. They're what you're going for, because you can convert them into so many gems and points. That's what it's all about, is getting hyper and hitting these gem dragons. I think this is something you run into in Mushi. So when you're not hyper, this is critical right here. So when I don't have hyper, I need to keep the chain going. I must keep the chain going at all costs. So like, you can't play conservatively here. You can't back down. You have to keep that chain going. And that involves, and to keep the chain going in this stage, that involves like going through points where you're not shooting and just letting a bunch of bullets fly at you, and kind of like flying headlong into bullet patterns, like up ahead right here like this. You just gotta fly into it. You can't be scared, otherwise you're gonna drop your chain. Okay, what I'm in for is we just need that hyper to get those dragons. There we go. And the interesting thing about this section is they come from the left and right. The game's doing a change up on you. If you try and get both, you'll get neither. So you gotta pick a side. You just pick the left side or the right side and stay on it. Because if you try and go back and forth, you cannot get both. And you actually lose out on way more points than if you just pick a side and shoot it. Okay, so I'm coming to this boss fight. I kept the chain going. And look how high it's boosting my score, and it's just gonna keep going up. Because, I mean, keeping your chain over 5k, it's insane the amount of difference it makes. Like, even having it at 3k for a long time is nothing compared to having it at 5k for a long time. So this whole fight, I'm thinking, just keep it going as long as possible. I can no miss this boss. I've done it before. But in a clutch situation like this, it's not something I really count on myself doing. So my goal, I remember when I was playing, is just keep the chain going. I was like, okay, one more phase down. Just keep it going, because every second I keep this chain up at above 5k, it's just exploding my score. So I was like, okay, just keep it going, keep it going. This phase is really easy. I actually don't know why it's attached to this boss, because it's so easy. I'm glad it's there, because it's like a nice break where you can like take a breather and think like, okay, we got this. This is the easy phase. So maybe that's why it was included. But difficulty wise, it doesn't measure up to the other phases of the boss fight. Beautiful. Get them points, baby. This one here, the trick is to just keep your eye on the middle of those bullets, and you're going to have to dodge through the middle of them. I know you don't want to, it's like pretty scary, but you have to. Okay, this phase is really interesting, because survival wise, when you know what to do, okay, when you first play this game, this phase is going to wreck you, because if you don't know what to do, it's going to murder you so fast. But when you know what to do, then it's pretty easy survival wise, but then it becomes actually really challenging to chain. But I figured out how to chain it. What you do is you just hide in these little coves, and you let those beams hit your graze area, but you just keep your hitbox just out of their reach. And so you're kind of like putting your foot right next to the fire the entire time to keep that chain. And I managed to no miss full chain that stage, and now you know where all these points came from, because that's a huge source of income, I guess. I don't know. I'm running out of analogies here. Okay, stage 5, an extremely challenging stage, not only survival wise but to chain, which would be surprising, because in this game more bullets, more enemies equals more chaining. But the developer did a really good job in certain sections of making it challenging to survive, but also keeping the bullets actually hard to chain, which I'll show. This part's really easy to chain, obviously. Right up here. Okay, here we go. So you got all these little ships flanking you, but then you have all this shit in your way that makes it hard to keep your chain going because you're having to dodge around all this stuff. And I think I do a reasonably good job. I remember at this point, like, my highest score was 1.1 million at this point. And I'm looking up there, I'm like, okay, I've already got 1.1 million. I'm at the beginning of stage 5. This is all gravy. And I think the score I had to beat was... No, the score I had to beat was 1.1 million. That was what Sh0 put up, so... all I had to do was beat that. But I was like, okay, let's really beat this. Let's just go crazy now. And I remember thinking, okay, I know I can do this. I was playing with a lot of confidence in this stage. After I got that no miss in stage 4, I was like, okay, I got this shit. And I played... I think the thing about playing shmups, especially ones with chains and really tight timings like this, is if you can get into a really confident headspace, you're going to play so much better. Like, you basically have to play in a headspace where you know you can do it and you're not afraid whatsoever. Because if you ever doubt yourself even for a second, you're going to get wrecked and you're going to drop your chain or get killed by something. So I guess there's my advice to whoever's listening. Yeah, you have to obviously have the knowledge. You can't just play with confidence and BS your way through a lot of shmups because they're designed in a way not to let you do that. But after you do your homework, you still have to be able to play with confidence. This pattern is such a little bitch. I can't remember if I make it through. I do. This here, these sweeping bullets look much harder than they are. So basically, you don't even think about those bullets. What you do there, this is all reaction. I haven't found a path through this thing. Yeah, it gets me. That still makes me mad watching that because I was so close to getting the hyper and keeping the chain. This part I hyper right away because what's funny is after a boss fight like that, you assume, okay, your chain's safe for a second, but that boss, you have to like immediately hyper afterward, otherwise you're not going to be able to chain off it. Or you're going to have to rush headlong into a pile of bullets to keep the chain going, so I just decided to hyper. This is why wide shot is hella good in this game, and probably way better than anything else. I've yet to see... I haven't unlocked, like, obviously, like, the super busted shots yet, but of the regular shots to unlock, wide shot is the way to go, for so many reasons. For one, it just covers your ass so much. For two, it damages enemies slower, which sounds bad, but it's actually really good for chaining because you can basically just delay lots of kills and stuff just by holding shot. You don't have to do any tricky timings and stuff like that. This phase, okay, this is the phase from hell, but it's actually not that bad once you know what you're doing. So I'll try to explain what you need to do. So when you're playing this, you need to know what corner of the screen you need to move and concentrate on. So the boss is coming in right here. So I just need to concentrate on the bottom right corner of the screen. That's all I'm looking at. That's all I'm caring about. I don't care about anything else. Get them points. Okay, now we're going to move. And we're going to concentrate just right on that little area of the screen right in front of my ship. Because the game is so crowded, if you're looking up and you're trying to watch all this shit flying at you, you're not going to be able to make it. So this is one of those sections where people ask, when do you look at your ship? This is it. When the bullets are literally right on top of you and you have no choice. And the nice thing is, because this is spirit mode, in Graves mode I can't imagine what that phase would be like, but in spirit mode, yeah, another reason why my score is so high is because I managed to get through that phase and full chain it. Because look at, yeah, I'm at 6k now. Okay, I remember coming into this thinking, okay, this first phase is really easy, and it's gonna do wonders for my score to keep alive. And I fuck it up. God damn it. My score probably would have broken 2 bill had I not fucked that up. Whatever. It is what it is. Because I think I do really good on this phase right here. So theoretically, if I could clear this boss without dying, I would have an insane bonus at the end. But at this stage, I am not quite prepared to do that, because this boss is the final boss, and it's actually really tough. This phase right here, you're gonna have to... Basically what you're doing is there's these little gaps that appear between the two bullet patterns. You have to anticipate the gaps. You can't even... Oh, okay, hold on. This is the blender from hell, that's what I call it. The blender. This is the hardest pattern in the game, for sure. And it can wreck you so fast. It could drain like 2 lives and all your bombs extremely fast. It basically never lets up. And the funny thing is, if you know what you're doing, it doesn't look that bad, but man, it'll wreck you very quickly. I've practiced this phase over and over and over in practice mode, but since there's no rank option in practice mode, I just had to practice it on hard mode. The funny thing is though, is that my score's gotten so high right now that it's just switched over to hard mode. So I was like, oh, I recognize all these patterns. These are just hard mode now. Yeah, this pattern is just I think it's something you see in a lot of Toho games, obviously. That's cool about this game, which I should have stated earlier, I'm sure you all know, is that it's a really interesting cross between a Toho shmup and a Dodonpachi. And I think it works extremely well. It's one of my favorite indie shmups. Used to be my favorite, but now I think Zero Ranger has displaced it somewhat. But still, it's up there for me for sure. I enjoy this game immensely. I guess I shouldn't point out... Okay, so I guess I should talk about the bullet patterns here. So this one, you gotta dodge around... You see those big white bullets? Just watch those and dodge around them, if that makes sense. You concentrate on the white bullets. This one's super easy. Again, you just watch the white bullets and follow them. Okay, I've seen this phase wreck a lot of people. So the trick here is you have to dodge in between the bullet patterns, but they actually widen up pretty nicely right at the end. So it comes down to just memorizing where they're going to widen, basically, or anticipating where they're going to widen. And you have to move forward sometimes to avoid the... I've done better jobs of it at this point. Like, I've missed that pattern quite a few times, but the thing is I'd already died. It really didn't matter. There's no life bonus, so once I dropped that first life, I mean, I could have gained a little more points, but it really didn't matter that much. And that's it. I hope you enjoyed my kind of hasty commentary, but I think this game's definitely one of my favorites. Still my favorite shmup on the Switch. I played the PC version here, but the Switch version is rock solid, so if you're a Switch owner, check that out. I guess a word of warning about this game for the PC owners out there is the PC version of this game is actually extremely taxing for a shmup. It's probably, of all the shmups I've ever played, it has the highest system requirements. Like, even my gaming PC, it can run it at 720p, but not enough to really record it at high quality. So, yeah, the game is, I don't know if it's just got a hell of a lot of effects or if it's a little inefficient, but yeah. Just a word of warning, it's extremely difficult to capture this game. That's why I'm probably the only one who uploaded runs of it. I actually had to use an external capture card because my PC couldn't handle, and it's a pretty high quality gaming PC, it couldn't handle running and recording it, which with most shmups it can very easily, but yeah. So, just something to keep in mind when you're considering which version to buy. If you don't have a powerful PC, I'd actually recommend the Switch version, because the Switch version is it must be much more optimized or toned down or whatever it is. The PC version looks a lot better, plays a lot better. You can turn off VSync. It is the better version, but if you don't have a powerful or somewhat powerful PC, just keep in mind you might not be able to run the game. So, thanks for watching.